I once saw two demons standing next to a priest while he was saying Mass. These words come from Saint Teresa of Ávila in her own story written because her teachers told her to write it. The words appear in the book of her life, chapter 38, one of the most scary chapters she ever wrote. It is not a made-up story, but a vision God let her see so that she and the Church could understand what it means to touch holy things while living in sin. She writes, "Once while a priest was saying Mass, I saw two demons beside him, and I understood that they held him tightly by the neck. I realized that this priest was in mortal sin, but I also saw that at the moment when he blessed the bread and wine, God's endless mercy was so great that he came down into that unworthy soul's hands for the sake of the good of the faithful people who were there. And I understood that even though the priest's soul was in darkness, the divine light still came down because God's love for souls is stronger than man's sin." Teresa shook as she wrote those words, because she had seen something terrible and yet full of God's logic. The holiness of God shining through the corruption of man. Christ comes at the words of blessing, not because the priest deserves it, but because he promised. The miracle does not depend on the minister's goodness, but on God's faithfulness. This is one of the most mysterious truths of Catholic teaching, that the sacraments work by the power of Christ himself. Ex opere operato, by the work worked. Even if the priest is lost in sin, the grace of the sacrament stays perfect, because God's mercy cannot be stopped by man's unworthiness. But what Teresa saw next would show the other side of that truth, the terrible justice that follows when grace is received without change. She writes, "At another time, while I was in prayer, I saw in spirit that a certain priest, whom I knew had died, and I saw his soul fall into hell as quickly as a stone thrown from a great height. The sight struck me with great fear and horror, and I was left amazed. He had been a priest for many years, and I understood that the Lord wanted me to see the punishment prepared for him. The demons grabbed him with fury, and I saw how they carried him away. Though it happened in a moment, it left a terror in my soul that no words can describe. I understood that this vision was to make me know how much a single mortal sin offends God, and how fearful it is for those who live in the state of grace to fall away from it." She does not name him. She never tells the details. But she says that he was a man who had said Mass for a long time and lived outwardly as a servant of God. And yet, when the moment came, his soul fell. Not drifted, but fell with the weight of a stone. It was a showing of divine justice to a soul who had already tasted divine mercy. Teresa, who had seen Christ so many times, who had spoken to angels, who had walked in ecstasy, now saw what happens when grace is betrayed. The sight burned itself into her memory. She could never forget it. She later confessed that after that vision, she could not look at any priest without praying for him. She understood that the closer a man stands to the altar, the greater his danger if he grows cold in love. Because the higher the gift, the deeper the fall. And yet, even in this dreadful vision, the mercy of God is still visible. For God allowed her to see these things, not to lose hope, but to understand his justice and to awaken her compassion. She realized that the very hands that can hold Christ can also hold their own judgment, depending on the heart that moves them. The same mystery applies to all of us. The sacraments stay holy even when we are not. Christ's presence does not depend on our goodness. He comes to the altar because he said, "This is my body." He forgives in confession because he said, "Whose sins you forgive, they are forgiven." But if the one who speaks those words does so without faith, without being sorry, the grace flows to others, but not to him. The saints have always known this. The mercy of God is not permission to sin. It is a call to change. It is a burning light that shows both heaven and hell at once. And God sometimes allows his friends to see horror so that others might be saved from it. When Teresa saw the priest's soul fall like a stone, she fell to her knees and cried. She did not think herself better. She saw her own weakness reflected in that fall, and she begged God to keep her always in His grace. From that day forward, she offered prayers and sacrifices for priests, especially for those in temptation or hidden sin. And her words echo through time as if written for our age. If we understood what it is to lose the grace of God, we would not sleep nor rest until we had made peace with Him. The scene of the two demons holding the priest remains one of the most chilling and comforting images in all of mystical theology. Chilling because it shows how the enemy clings to the soul in mortal sin, even when that soul stands before the altar of God. Comforting because it shows a mercy so vast that even the presence of demons cannot prevent Christ from coming down upon the altar. The devil may hold the man, but he cannot hold the host. Teresa saw that Christ's power is absolute, that even in the midst of darkness, He still comes, still gives Himself, still saves. But she also saw that this very mercy becomes judgment for those who abuse it. The hands that raise the chalice are not protected by habit or title, only by holiness. These two visions, the priest at the altar and the soul falling like a stone, are not separate stories. They are one lesson. They tell us that sin is real, that grace is stronger, and that not caring is death. They tell us that what we do with grace decides everything. And now, 5 centuries later, these words still pierce the soul. I saw his soul fall into hell, as a stone falls from a great height. They are meant to wake us up, not scare us, to make us pray, not lose hope, to make us understand that every Mass we attend, every communion we receive, every confession we make, all of it touches eternity. When we receive the Eucharist, Christ comes to us as truly as He came into that unworthy priest's hands. He comes for love of us, fervently, not for our merits. But what we do with that love, that is what decides our eternity. Saint Teresa's visions are not just about priests. They are about every soul that lives between grace and sin, light and darkness, mercy and pride. Each of us holds in our hands something sacred, our freedom. And what we do with it determines whether we rise like fire or fall like a stone. So tonight, as you finish this story, let the image stay with you, not to frighten, but to purify. Remember that the sacraments are real, that God's mercy still burns through every Mass, every confession, every whispered prayer. And remember, too, that His justice is not gone. It only waits for the final hour. Pray for priests. Pray for those who stand at the altar, that their hands may be clean and their hearts awake. Pray for the Church, for those who have fallen, and for those who still stand, shaking between heaven and hell. And if this story has stirred something in your soul, do not let it fade. Take a moment of silence. Offer a prayer for the salvation of souls and for the grace never to fall from friendship with God. And if you wish to walk with us in these stories of faith and mercy, subscribe and pray with us. May Saint Teresa of Jesus intercede for us all. May the Lord keep His priests pure, His people faithful, and His Church holy. And may His mercy, which comes down even upon unworthy hands, save us from the fall.